YouTube community? It's your favorite apostate and undude too, here, once again exposing those Watchtower inconsistencies and freeing you from the prison of your very own mind. Now, I happen to be reading an article from the July 2007 issue of the Watchtower magazine, and yes, by the way, I do sometimes get more than a month behind on my magazine reading these days. I like to consider it a fringe benefit of apostasy. And on that note, Jehovah's Witnesses, you probably have already gathered that I'm a filthy, nasty, disgusting heretic that's in need of being decapitated, dismembered, maimed, burned, and otherwise harmed by a loving God once Armageddon rolls around. Because we all know that apostates such as myself get killed in special ways once the end comes. So you may find that as I do this video, my viewpoints are slightly askewed from those of your own. Nevertheless, I'll present my opinions. Now, the article that I was reading is this one right here, How the Bible Changed My Life. I No Longer Slave for Lifeless Idols. As you can see, it was written by Abba Dansu, and this is a woman of a tribal nature. That's all I'm going to say on that. So I will read what she has to say here, and then I will periodically interject with my thoughts and opinions. And this is an editorial or an opinion video. By no means am I suggesting that the subjective viewpoints are meant to be delineations of absolute truth. In no way. This is an open discussion between you and I would encourage you to challenge me on my conclusions. In any event, I will, without delay, read the article. It says, "When I was a child, my father sent me and my sister to a fetish convent where we were initiated into the traditional beliefs. When I grew up, I adopted Dedua of the Yoruba culture as my god. I built a house for this god and regularly offered sacrifices of yams, palm oil, snails, chickens, doves, and various other animals. These sacrifices were costly, often consuming nearly all of my resources." Now, as I read this paragraph, something struck me, something very bizarre, and I began to draw a correlation between the beliefs and the culture of this woman, or that she formerly had, and the beliefs and the cultures of Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide.
But an undude too. Surely you can't be suggesting that...
Yes, I am suggesting. And don't call me Shirley, but I'll point out what I mean by what exactly I'm suggesting. And again, feel free to challenge me on any of my subjective viewpoints here. But when she brought out that she was sent to a fetish convent where she was initiated into the traditional belief system, that reminded me very specifically of the pioneer schools, the elder schools, the ministerial servant schools, the Gilead school, where certain levels within the organization are initiated into the belief systems, special belief systems that you and I, the lowly serfs, the publishers of the organization, are not familiar with. And I base this, if you talk with anybody who has been to these schools, they will tell you themselves that they have learned so much more. Well, if we're all getting fed from the same table here with the same publications, then how are they getting fed more than you or I? And we all already know that certain members receive secret publications. So I'm just saying, they're being initiated into fetish belief systems. Anyway, and this part right here where she says she adopted Dedua as her god and built a house for this god, regularly offering sacrifices that were costly, often consuming nearly all of her resources. What this reminded me of, in particular, is the financial sacrifice of pioneers and Jehovah's Witnesses in general, which I'll get to them. But the pioneers in particular are walking financial disasters. And at least here in America, or the pioneers that I'm familiar with locally, some of them, in lieu of getting a job, they find that the pioneer ministry is an excuse for them to leech off of the generosity of others. And if one is willing to donate their time in this ministry, I can by no means fault them for that. I think that's at least says something about their character and their devotion to an ideal. However, where I do fault them is that they almost expect, by virtue of this sacrifice, you to share the burden. It's almost an unspoken, unwritten rule that when you ride in a Pioneer car, you are expected to tip the driver because of the financial burden. They're so fatigued from being out in the ministry, and gas is so costly. Well, you knew that going in, so don't bellyache about it. Get a job! Just saying. Now, the other thing that I noticed is that some of these pioneers would shift from house to house, living off the generosity of the brothers and sisters who would take them in, because they didn't want to get a job with normal hours, and thusly no one would hire them. They didn't want to work normally, so they simply refused to work. And they, of course, back this up and justify it with their so-called spirituality, which I think is highly immoral. Now, I will share with you some snore-worthy statistics regarding Jehovah's Witnesses and the amount of money that they really sacrifice within the confines of the organization. I was not able to find too detailed information, but I did run across a financial report of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society from the year 1998. Now, the total revenues that they took in from donations worldwide of monetary value was $951 million. Adjusting for inflation, we arrive at revenues totaling $1,284,830,000 roughly in today's money, assuming that donations neither went up nor did they go down. The yearly share then, by that estimate, and how I arrived at that figure was by rounding down to $1 billion shared by 7 million Jehovah's Witnesses. At that rate, then, every man, woman, and child within the organization donates $142.85 a year. Now, that might not sound like a whole bunch, but when you consider the fact that people who live in non-industrialized nations are probably donating considerably less than the rest of us in civilized cultures are, the share goes up than for you and I who live in America and thusly just have far more money than everybody else has. The other figure that I came up with was that of the donation of your time, which is far greater than the donation of your physical assets, but I'll shoot that number by you. For the year 2009, total hours reported in the field ministry were 1,557,788,344 hours. And as of July 2011, the average American income is $19.52. So do you see where I'm going with that? Then by that rate, that means that $30,408,028,474.88 worth of time, labor, is being donated to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society annually. By that figure, divided equally amongst everyone, all 7 million Jehovah's Witnesses, that means that you have forfeited $4,344 worth of your time. Now, $4,000 can make a lot of difference in a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses' lives worldwide. That is what they have forfeited. That is a huge financial cost. Just like Abba Dansu here, the sacrifices are costly, often consuming nearly all of her resources. Now, due to the constraints of time, I'm not going to share with you a statistic regarding education that I came up with in the New York Times, but I will be providing a link in the description section of this video, and I would encourage you very greatly to take a look at it and then see the correlation between education and income that the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society would have you pretend wasn't there. In fact, I will quote an excerpt from the 4/15/2008 Watchtower, which says this: "What, though, of higher education received in a college or university? This is widely viewed as vital to success," and statistics repeatedly back that up. "Yet many who pursue such education end up with their minds filled with harmful propaganda." That's the pot calling the kettle black. "Such education wastes valuable youthful years that could be best used in Jehovah's service, or in the service to a publishing corporation. Depends on how you look at it. Perhaps it is not surprising that in lands where many have received such an education, belief in God is an all-time low." No. Belief in God is at an all-time low because of this insistence of an adherence to the traditions of men which are absolutely baseless on the Bible. That disillusions people, and that results in people not believing in God. Men, the traditions of men through religious institutions like Jehovah's Witnesses. I digress.
Rather than looking to the advanced educational systems of this world for security, a Christian trusts in Jehovah.
A Christian trusts in Jehovah. But Jehovah also says, go to the ant, you lazy one, and a man that does not provide for his household is worse than a man without faith. And I'm just saying, Jehovah is probably not going to pay for your kidney transplant once you're 70 and your organs start failing. I'm just saying. The statistics speak for themselves, and again, I'm running short on time here, so I'm going to share these other thoughts from this article. She says, I learned that Jehovah is the only true God. I also learned that he does not approve of the use of idols in worship. I realized what I needed to do, so I threw all my images away, cleaning my house of everything pertaining to idol worship. When I read this paragraph, the question arose, did she really give up her idols, or did she simply make a trade? What I mean by that is, whereas the shelf space that was once taken up by lifeless idols of stone and ritual prayer beads and the like, are now being taken up by idols made of paper. Because as you well know, sometimes the doctrines that are delineated in this pamphlet right here are taken with more importance and with stricter adherence than the doctrines found in the Bible itself. So, did she simply make a trade? It's a question that I would like you to answer for yourself. And then lastly, she sums up the article this way. She says, applying Bible principles has helped me improve my relationship with my children. I also feel that a burden has been lifted from my shoulders. I used to exhaust my resources on lifeless idols that did not benefit me in any way. Now I worship Jehovah, who provides a lasting solution to all of our problems. Now this, oddly enough, is a paragraph that I can identify with. But as usual, I approach it with a slightly different perspective than most Jehovah's Witnesses do. You see, I agree, applying Bible principles has lifted a tremendous burden from my shoulders. The burden of being shackled to the expectations of the wizards of smart up in Brooklyn, Bethel, USA. I no longer exhaust my resources serving those lifeless, useless idols that did not benefit me in any way. Just saying. And now I worship Jehovah to the best of my ability that, I read through the Bible. And I agree, he does provide a lasting solution for all problems. And I believe that he wants each and every one of us to come to the same conclusion that I've come to, which is that life is a state of mind.